On March 28, 2026, Aryna Sabalenka walked off the court in Miami carrying a Sunshine Double, a 23 and 1 season record, and the kind of aura that makes other players shrink before the warm-up even starts. 5 days later, she pulled out of Stuttgart with an undisclosed injury. And somewhere in the draw sheet for the Madrid Open, sitting at seed 29, is the name of a 20-year-old left-hander from the Philippines who has already beaten 3 top 10 players this season and who has never, not once, faced Sabalenka across a net. 0 head-to-head. A blank page. And in tennis, a blank page between a dominant champion and a fearless young player with nothing to lose is the most dangerous document in the sport. Let me be clear about what this is not. This is not a prediction that Alex Eala will beat Aryna Sabalenka in Madrid. Sabalenka is the most dominant force in women's tennis right now, and her record in the Spanish capital reads like a landlord collecting rent. 3 titles in the last 4 years, 20 match wins. A winning percentage that only Serena Williams reached faster at that venue. What this is, instead, is a forensic look at why the specific combination of Eala's game, Sabalenka's current physical uncertainty, and Madrid's unique playing conditions creates a scenario more volatile than the seedings suggest. And volatility in tennis is where history gets rewritten. Start with what Eala has actually done in 2026, because the numbers deserve to be laid out honestly before we start projecting anything. She opened the season ranked 138th in the world. That number now reads 45, and 2 weeks ago it was 29, a career high that made her the highest-ranked Filipino tennis player in history, male or female. The climb was not gradual. It was violent. In Dubai, she dismantled Jasmine Paolini 6-1, 7-6. Paolini was ranked 8th in the world. A week later, she beat Aryna Sabalenka to reach the quarterfinals before Coco Gauff shut the door with a 6-0, 6-2 masterclass. At Indian Wells, seeded 31st, she tore through Diana Yastremska in 3 gritty sets, then watched Gauff retire trailing 6-2, 2-love after barely 40 minutes of play. She reached the round of 16. At Miami, she won the longest match of her career against Laura Siegemund, 3 hours and 20 minutes of attrition on a surface that rewards patience, then beat Magda Linette before Karolina Muchova ended her run with a 6-0, 6-2 demolition that felt like a different sport entirely. And this is the thing about Eala that makes her simultaneously thrilling and impossible to predict. She does not exist in the middle. She operates at extremes. The same player who gutted Paolini in Dubai got flattened by Muchova in Miami. The same player who took the first set off Iga Swiatek in Madrid last year on clay as a wild card, ranked outside the top 100, collapsed in the decider 6-2. She does not fade. She detonates or gets detonated. There is no quiet loss in her portfolio. Now, that volatility has a mechanical explanation, and it lives inside her service motion. Eala's serve is her ceiling and her floor simultaneously. Last season, she routinely clocked first serves below 90 miles per hour. For context, the WTA Tour average sits around 105. Sabalenka hovers near 110. When Eala's first serve percentage drops, and it dropped to 39% in the first set against Leylah Fernandez in Stuttgart just 2 days ago, she becomes a different player. Not worse in the traditional sense, but structurally unable to build pressure on her own terms. She won 89% of points behind her first serve in that Fernandez match. The problem was that she barely got it in. The raw quality is there. The consistency is still under construction. But here is where the story forks, because there is a second Alex Eala that lives inside the return games, and that player is a legitimate problem for everyone on tour. When she is receiving, her footwork tightens, her anticipation sharpens, and her left-handed forehand, that whipping, angular shot that curves away from right-handers like a conversation they were not invited to, becomes a weapon that disrupts timing in ways most opponents simply are not prepared for. She broke Swiatek twice in the first set in Madrid last year. She broke Paolini 4 times in Dubai. She broke Madison Keys en route to the Miami semifinals in 2025. Her return game does not care about rankings. It reads the ball, picks the corner, and punishes hesitation. Against Sabalenka, that return game would face its ultimate examination. Sabalenka's serve is not just fast, it is structurally oppressive. She generates pace from a coiled, compact motion that disguises direction until the last possible instant. On hard courts, where the ball skids and stays low, returning Sabalenka often feels like trying to redirect a cannonball. But clay changes the physics. The ball sits up slightly higher, the bounce is longer, the extra millisecond of hang time is real. And Madrid's clay, specifically, is not Roland Garros clay. Madrid sits at an altitude of roughly 650 meters. The air is thinner. The ball travels faster through the flight phase, but still grips the surface on the bounce. It is a hybrid environment, faster than Rome, slower than a hard court, with a bounce that rewards players who can take the ball early and redirect with angle rather than pure depth. This is where Eala's left-handedness stops being a footnote and becomes a tactical lever. Against a right-handed power player like Sabalenka, Eala's forehand, her dominant shot, naturally targets the backhand side. On clay, that cross-court forehand from the left side of the court drags the rally into Sabalenka's backhand corner with heavy, kicking topspin that moves away from the body. Sabalenka's backhand is excellent, let nobody claim otherwise, but it is a shot that prefers to dictate rather than defend. When she is pulled wide on the backhand and forced to generate from a compromised position, her error rate climbs. Eala's entire baseline game is designed, almost accidentally, to exploit exactly that geometry. Then there is the injury question, and it would be irresponsible to ignore it. Sabalenka pulled out of Stuttgart with an unspecified injury sustained after her Miami triumph. She did not name it. She said only that she tried everything to recover in time and was not ready. She is listed on the Madrid entry list. She is the top seed. But she has not played a competitive match in nearly 3 weeks, and her clay court season, which she dominated last year en route to a third Madrid title, now begins without any tune-up event. No Stuttgart reps, no match rhythm on the red dirt. Just straight into a WTA 1000 draw in a city she owns, carrying fitness questions that she has not publicly answered. This matters because Sabalenka's dominance is built on physical overwhelm. She does not finesse you. She bludgeons you. Her game requires the legs to anchor those ground strokes, the core to generate that serve, the lateral movement to cover the court after the first aggressive shot pulls her out of position. If the injury, whatever it is, has cost her even 5% of her movement, clay is the surface where that 5% becomes most visible. The longer rallies, the wider angles, the sliding that demands trust in your body, all of it punishes athletes who are managing rather than competing. Eala, by contrast, arrives in Madrid with match sharpness that cuts both ways. She played Linz and Stuttgart in the last 10 days. She lost both times to Ostapenko in the round of 16 after blowing a 5-1 second-set lead, and to Fernandez in the opening round of Stuttgart in straight sets. Those results are not encouraging on paper. But dig into the Ostapenko match, and the picture shifts. Eala led by a break in both sets. She was dictating play with her forehand, moving Ostapenko around the baseline, and controlling the geometry of the rallies. What she could not do was close. She won the big points during the building phase and lost them during the finishing phase. That is a maturity gap, not a talent gap, and it is a gap that narrows the longer a young player spends in these moments. The Stuttgart loss to Fernandez was more straightforward. Eala's serve disappeared in the first set, and once Fernandez established a rhythm on her return, the match was functionally over. But even there, the second set was tighter, 4-6, and Eala's movement on the clay, in only her second tournament on the surface this year, showed noticeable improvement from Linz. She slid with more confidence. Her spacing on ground strokes was cleaner. The footwork that makes her so dangerous on hard courts was beginning to translate, imperfectly but visibly, to the dirt. Here is the scenario that should genuinely worry Sabalenka's camp, if they are being honest behind closed doors. It is a third-round match. Sabalenka has scraped through the opening rounds, shaking off rust, finding her range. The serve is landing, but the legs are half a step slow. Eala has won 2 rounds with the kind of scrappy, high-energy tennis that her Filipino fanbase, and let us talk about that fanbase for a moment, because it is one of the most remarkable phenomena in modern tennis, has turned into a global event. Wherever Eala plays, the stands fill with Filipino flags, the noise builds, and the atmosphere shifts from a tennis match to something closer to a basketball game in Manila. She feeds off that energy. It changes the court. At the Australian Open this year, the BBC ran a feature on how Eala's popularity had overwhelmed the tournament's infrastructure. At Indian Wells, the crowd support was so loud during her match against Goff that the umpire had to intervene multiple times. At a place like Madrid, where the Caja Magica crowd is already volatile and emotional, a contingent of passionate Filipino fans could tilt the acoustics of the arena in ways that make Sabalenka's grunting and power approach feel, for once, like it is not the loudest thing in the building. And then there is the psychological dimension that no statistic captures. Eala has beaten 3 top 10 players this season. She has won sets against Swiatek on clay. She has pushed Goff to the edge on hard courts. She carries no scar tissue against Sabalenka because she has never played her. There is no memory of being overwhelmed, no muscle memory flinch from a previous beating. She would walk onto the court with a clean emotional slate, which is a luxury that most of the top 20 cannot claim against the world number 1. Sabalenka has already beaten them. She has already made them doubt. Eala does not have that doubt yet, and the absence of it is a resource. Can she win? Let me answer that as honestly as the evidence permits. On her best day, first serve landing at 70%, forehand finding the corners, return game breaking serve twice per set, Eala has the raw tools to take a set off almost anyone in the world. She has already proven that. Taking a match, 3 sets, against the most dominant player of 2026 requires something additional. It requires sustained execution across 2 hours. It requires holding serve under pressure when Sabalenka is screaming and the ball is coming back at 100 miles an hour. It requires a second serve that does not become a liability at 30-40. Eala has not yet demonstrated that she can sustain that level for an entire match against a player of Sabalenka's caliber because she has never had to. Mutua exposed the gap. Goff exposed the gap. Even Ostapenko in Linz exposed the gap from the other direction. Eala had the match under control and could not slam the door shut. But Madrid is not Miami. Madrid is not Linz. Madrid's altitude and surface create a court where Eala's forehand carries an extra half-second of danger, where Sabalenka's serve loses a fraction of its bite compared to hard courts, where the rally length sits in the range that favors returners over servers. If there is a single venue on the WTA calendar where the mathematical mismatch between Eala and Sabalenka compresses to its smallest margin, it is the Caja Magica. There is a deeper story here, too, one that transcends a single potential matchup. Eala trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor from the age of 14. She learned the game on Spanish clay. She grew up watching Nadal slide into forehands 10 meters behind the baseline on that very surface. The irony of her career so far is that hard courts have been her proving ground, Miami, Indian Wells, Dubai, while clay has remained the surface where her results lag behind her ability. Her 2026 clay record entering Madrid is modest. 1 win over Julia Grabher and Linz, losses to Ostapenko and Fernandez. But results and readiness are not the same thing. She has played on clay for barely 2 weeks after spending 3 months building confidence on faster surfaces. The foundation she laid in those hard court results, the belief, the physical conditioning, the match toughness, does not evaporate when she steps onto dirt. It just needs time to translate. Sabalenka should be the favorite in any matchup with Eala. That is not debate. It is arithmetic. But the question this Madrid draw poses is whether the arithmetic accounts for an injured champion starting her clay season cold, a left-handed returner whose game is geometrically designed to cause problems, a unique altitude that softens the serve advantage, and a fanbase that will turn the Caja Magica into something approaching a home court for the underdog. Add those variables together, and what you get is not an upset prediction. What you get is a match that, if the draw delivers it, will be the most compelling collision of trajectories in the first half of the 2026 season. Sabalenka's 2026 has been a procession. Brisbane, Australian Open Final, Indian Wells, Miami 4 tournaments, 3 titles, 1 loss to Rybakina in a final she led by a break in the third set. She has been so dominant that her only competitive threat has come from the very top of the rankings. Nobody ranked below 20 has taken a set from her all year. Nobody ranked below 50 has come within 5 games of her in a match. The wall she has built around her season is tall, thick, and covered in the kind of confidence that accumulates when you win 23 of 24 matches. That wall does not come down easily. It does not come down because a 20-year-old from Manila with a shaky serve and a devastating forehand shows up with belief in her eyes. But walls have been breached before in this sport by players who were not supposed to be in the conversation. Eala is not yet a contender for the Madrid title. She may lose in the second round to a veteran clay courter who exploits her serve and sends her packing before Sabalenka even takes the court. That is the most statistically likely outcome, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. What is also true, and what the numbers and the eye test and the trajectory all confirm, is that Eala is closer to causing a seismic upset at a major event than any player outside the top 20. She has beaten 3 of them this year. She took a set off the defending Madrid champion on this surface 12 months ago. She is improving month by month, tournament by tournament, and her game, the left-handed angles, the return wizardry, the crowd-fueled intensity, is specifically, almost surgically, suited to giving Sabalenka problems that she cannot simply overpower. Madrid begins on April 21st. Sabalenka will be the top seed. Eala will be somewhere in the bottom third of the draw, carrying a ranking that undersells her talent and a clay court record that undersells her potential. If the bracket lines them up, do not look away. Do not check your phone. Do not assume the scoreline will be routine. Because in 20 years, when people talk about the match that announced Alex Eala to the world as something more than a feel-good story, more than a wild-card darling, more than a popular player with a passionate fan base, it might just be this one. Or it might not happen at all. That is what makes the next 2 weeks the most fascinating window in women's tennis this spring. The draw has not been made. The matchup is not guaranteed. But the ingredients are sitting on the counter, and the recipe is for chaos.